Hello, everyone. This is Mark Janish from the Bench Podcast Special Edition with special guest Rick Prussing, attorney out of Santa Barbara, but also a devoted Michigan State Spartan fan. And we decided to have him on, and we're going to discuss today Michigan State's 2019-2020 team and their prospects going into game number 4 Monday night against Charleston Southern. Now, last night's win, 76-73 in the Dave Gavitt Games Classic in Newark, New Jersey at the Prudential Center, provided a lot of great moments. 37 points from Miles Powell from the Seton Hall Pirates, but it was not enough as the Michigan State Spartans prevailed 76-73, led by Cassius Winston, 21 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and Malik Brown, freshman, 7 for 7 last night, had 17 points, 5 rebounds off the bench. Want to welcome you, Rick, to the program and have you introduce yourself and just we'll talk about how you acquired your Michigan State fandom. You're an undergraduate from Michigan State. From when to when?
Mark, first I want to say thank you for having me today, and I'm very excited about this podcast, and of course I'm very excited about Michigan State basketball. But before we get to any of that, there's something very important that I want to say, and that is that my heart goes out to the Winston family, and Cassius and his mom and his dad and his entire family for the tragic loss of Zachary. And I know all of Michigan State has had a heavy heart this last week, and I just wanted to say that before we got started. And,
totally appreciate that, because if you hadn't have said it, I probably would have.
I'm
sure. So I appreciate that. Go ahead.
You bet. So about me, I graduated from Michigan State in 1978, and I grew up in Southwest Michigan, and I became a very strong Michigan State basketball fan back in the days of Judd Heathcote and Irvin Magic Johnson and the 1979 NCAA championship, and I've been a very enthusiastic Michigan State basketball fan ever since. And
excellent.
I just want to also say, I know you have some questions, but I want to say I cannot overstate how important I think the win over Seton Hall last night was. We had a very close game against Kentucky, a very a marquee opponent, you might say.
Yes, you did. The Champions Classic, Madison Square Garden.
To go into Seton Hall last night on the road and face a very, very talented Seton Hall team under adverse conditions and being down with a couple of minutes to go in that game and finding a way to get it done and coming out of there with a win. I cannot overstate the importance of that win.
Despite, for those that may have seen the game or not seen the game, Michigan State defensively held Seton Hall scoreless for the final 2:40 of that game. That must have brought you a lot of joy to see the defense rise up, and despite the fact that Miles Powell went off for 37 points, it must have really warmed your heart to see the defense rise up in the final 2:40 and see that happen. Michigan State also, they capitalized on 17 Seton Hall turnovers for 19 points as far as that goes. So they really took advantage of the turnovers. They didn't necessarily shoot great, but they did find a way to get the win, and I guess that's what you'll always want to do on the road, is just give yourself an opportunity.
Well, Mark, under Coach Izzo, it's first things first. And that first things first means defense. And if you're not playing defense, 110%, you're not going to be spending too many minutes out on that basketball floor under Tom Izzo. Before we go too much farther, there's another thing that I want to mention, and that's this. Tom Izzo is a great coach, but we never hear too much about the assistant coaches, Mark, and I want to just take my hat off, because year in and year out, I have watched Dwayne Stevens, Mike Garland,
Yes.
Dane Fife.
Yes.
These guys are the cornerstones, they are the pillars, they are the field marshals, and all day, every day, they are in there making sure that these players are focused and disciplined and playing the kind of basketball that we saw last night. So hats off to these assistant coaches. We just never hear enough about them.
That is actually true, since Tom Izzo is what I believe the de facto face of the athletic department, the most high-profile individual. That was his 53rd win against a top 10, top 20 ranked team in his career. But he's been a coach for 25 years. The 64-year-old Izzo. Like I said, I think he is a guy who, if I was Michigan State, I think I would plaster his face and his personality to represent the program. He's represented the program well over the years, but I'm glad that you've mentioned the guys behind the scenes, because they never get enough credit.
Absolutely right, and they're all important and do such a fantastic job. So you want to talk about our starting five and all of the great cast that surrounds them, or where would you like to go, Mark?
Sure. If we do know that. Let's go with the guy who's playing second fiddle in the orchestra, so to speak, Aaron Henry. He's averaging 11.3 points a game so far this year. However, as you know, last night he tweaked an ankle a little bit, but he still had some very productive minutes despite what I thought was going to be an injury that would take him off the court. So if you want to speak to Aaron Henry out of Indianapolis, Indiana, you're welcome to go ahead and
sure.
and elocute regarding his status and what you think the season might hold for him, since after Cassius Winston, he is the second leading scorer on the team at this point.
Well, I think Michigan State's very, very happy to have a player like Aaron Henry, and he has some size. He's 6'6", and Aaron can do just about everything. He can handle the ball.
Yes.
He can rebound.
Mm-hmm.
His outside shot seems to be developing.
Mm-hmm.
He can drive to the basket. Mm-hmm. He is very strong, very powerful, very wiry, and Aaron Henry is a very good basketball player. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to start talking about what may or may not happen with him after this year. I hope he stays all 4 years with Michigan State.
Right, but what you're telling me is that you believe he has a tremendous upside after some ups and downs as a freshman last year. He played very well against LSU in one of the tournament games. I believe it was second round last year. So he's beginning to be counted on more, and he seems to be, as you stated, has a tremendous upside. What do you think of some areas that he could grow in and improve?
I don't find any overall weaknesses in Aaron's game. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert in that regard, but okay. I don't see any particular weaknesses. Mm-hmm. My guess is that as Aaron gains time on the floor mm-hmm. and faces more and more competition, mm-hmm. which he's going to do this year.
Right.
He has all of the tools and the instincts and the raw talent to mm-hmm. just continue to mature. and become a better and better basketball player.
Right.
So I think very highly of Aaron Henry.
Right. I'm going to ask you about a couple more guys who I think, with more playing time, can have a remarkably positive influence on the team. That would be sophomore Marcus Bingham Jr. And the next guy I'm going to ask, Marcus Bingham Jr. And what about last night's second highest scorer, Malik Hall? Had 17 points last night, 7 for 7 from the floor, and was kind of like you were describing, a bit wiry, but he actually made all his shot. I looked at the shot chart this morning, and he seems to have quite a range of ability as far as. Can you speak to Marcus Bingham Jr. or Malik Hall?
Be happy to.
As far as that goes.
Well, you mentioned someone who we all watched last year with a hopeful eye, Marcus Bingham.
Yes.
And at 6'11", I think he's the tallest player. No, there's one other, but of the active players who are really playing serious minutes, Marcus is our tallest.
Right.
Marcus has tremendous skill and potential.
Right.
He had a very, very good showing in the game against Binghamton. Kind of a little bit of a breakout performance, I thought, by Marcus in that game.
Okay, 100-47 win for Michigan State, if I remember correctly.
That is correct,
yes.
But to be taken a bit with a grain of salt, because it was nowhere near the level of an opponent as they faced last night. But nevertheless, you know, Marcus put on a substantial amount of size over the summer. It appears to me that he, was working very hard, probably in the weight room. That he was also very cognizant of his diet. Marcus is showing a lot more poise and confidence on the floor this year. And Marcus can shoot the ball from outside. He has a tremendous amount of agility for someone of his size.
Yes.
And I would again look at a player like Marcus Bingham as someone who's just going to mature and become better and better as he gets more playing minutes. Last night's performance by Malik Hall, I think, took a lot of people by surprise.
It sure did me.
We hadn't seen anything like that out of Malik up to this point, but very clearly, and if you look at Malik's physical stature, 6'7" and 215, I'm not quite sure. That 215 might be more like about 225. Malik Hall is a sculpted, physical-looking player, just a fine-looking athlete.
Yeah, the distribution of his weight and his body type doesn't lend itself to making you believe physically. If you look at him,
he's a Spartan statue.
You're gonna think that, hey, he's not 225, because he looks thinner than that. Is what I'm trying to say.
Well, maybe we have a difference of opinion on that, but in any event, big, strong, strapping kid at 6'7", who last night you saw shoot the ball from outside. You saw him drive on a much bigger defending opponent and throw the ball down with authority as a freshman. I saw him miss a couple of free throws. Okay, a couple check marks there.
Right.
But Malik Hall had what anyone would have to consider to be a breakout performance last night. And what was more heartening about it was he recognized his own hot streak and was not afraid to take advantage of it. He got the ball. He realized that he had a bit of a hot hand last night, and he was not bashful about taking advantage of that situation.
Also, I noticed that even though he is a freshman, his shot selection was very good, going 7 for 7 last night. Because a lot of times you see players get caught up in the speed of the game, and you also have see that there appeared to be no anxiety in him. I was thinking that he might have a little bit of ice water in those veins. Nothing seemed to faze him, regardless of where he was on the court.
He was a cool, calm, collected customer. Not to use a shop-worn cliche too much, but I agree 100%, Mark. Malik Hall was mature beyond his years out there last night, and if he keeps that up, Michigan State has some very good things in store for it this year.
You seem to have at Michigan State a relatively young team, and I'm just wondering, beyond the Aaron Henrys of the world and beyond the Cassius Williams of Winston, thank you, Winston. Tomato.
We think about him so much; it's sometimes hard to remember his name.
But no, we will be remembering his name during the Big Ten season and going into March, and we're going to address the Big Ten here in just a moment. But I wanted to know from you, who do you think of those young freshmen, sophomores, etc., that are on the bench that don't start? Who do you think might be the guys to watch for Michigan State as the season progresses? I mean, is Mark Rocket Watts going to fizzle out, and does he have enough fuel to fuel the Spartans to success off the bench, or is it going to be somebody else who you might think will rise up and be consistent? Because I think it's that consistency that Tom Izzo might be looking for. But that's what the preseason is for, and so forth. So.
Well, I'll speak quickly to Rocket Watts.
Yes.
It's early to tell, but the thing that's impressed me about Rocket is that even though it seems like we would like to see a little more scoring output from him, Rocket is starting, and the reason he's starting goes back to something I said at the very beginning of this podcast, which is he plays defense. Period. On a report. He hustles hard on defense. He is making some good passes. He is putting himself in position to get some rebounds, and I think that the scoring will come to Rocket Watts. If he takes care of the little things, as I've heard Cassius say enough times, the big things are going to happen. And Rocket Watts is doing that. And so that's what I have to say about Mark Rocket Watts for now. I think he's going to grow into his position there. He's got all of the raw talent that you could ever want. Now, you asked about the cast of characters that are sort of people coming off of the bench. We've already talked about a couple of them. And we saw a big example of that last night as we spoke with Malik Hall.
Yes.
Another huge example that we saw of that in the game before with against Binghamton was Marcus Bingham. And we're going to see Marcus Bingham getting a lot of minutes this year, and I think we're going to see some really good things out of him.
Okay, because Rocket Watts, I noticed looking at the statistics this morning, he's averaging almost 24 minutes a game. So Tom Izzo does have some trust in the young man, even though his numbers are not necessarily representative of someone who's going to be up and coming. But we will keep an eye on the Rocket and see what he.
Well, Mark, and as we all know, it's not always what shows up in the line score that is what is important.
That is right.
I can assure you, Mr. Izzo, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Garlands, and Mr. Fife are not just looking at the line score right now when it comes to Rocket Watts.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's go back to some of the other players that we can expect to be coming off the bench.
That's fine.
Possibly one of the biggest of which, Mark, Gabe Brown. Gabe Brown is a cold, calculated assassin, cobra killer from outside with the basketball.
He's from 6'7", 215, out of Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Ypsi, as we say, Mark. He's out of Ypsi.
Okay.
Gabe Brown can shoot it. Gabe Brown can rebound. He can play defense. He can pass. He's got a nose for the game. He's just a natural player. You're going to see some things out of Gabe Brown. I don't want to blow too much smoke, but I think Gabe Brown's a kind of a shooter and a kind of a guy who's capable of putting up a big number in a real hurry. And it's a blessing to have a guy like him, to come off of the bench. Another very, very talented, big, physical, imposing player who's just a freshman, Julius Marble. And we haven't seen a lot out of Julius Marble so far, but what we have seen has been very promising. And so as we see people get into possible, as we see the Xavier Tillmans of the world and the Thomas Kithiers of the world have to take a breather for whatever reason, or heaven forbid, have to sit out a game or two because of an injury or for whatever reason, more likely foul problems, or more likely maybe just need to sit out and catch their breath. It sure as heck is nice to have a Julius Marble, a Marcus Bingham, a Malik Hall, and a Gabe Brown sitting there to choose from to put in the game. And each one of these guys has a particular role that they can possibly play as well.
A skill set.
Now, we got a couple of guys we haven't even mentioned yet, which are also very important players on this team. Not the least of which is Kyle Arntz. Now, if we had a guy who you really wanted to consider to be a sixth man on the Michigan State team, you'd have to say that would be Kyle Arntz. Kyle's a redshirt senior. Kyle can do it all. He's almost kind of a Cassie Russell style player. I know I'm probably going to lose a few of our fans. I'm going way back. But Kyle is fast. He is physical. He can shoot from outside. He can drive the ball and dunk it right down your throat. He is a pure athlete. He's almost a Kirk Gibson type of a. Those are two pretty big names, Cassie Russell and Kirk Gibson. But
yes, they are.
Kyle Arntz is a total athlete. Kyle, and my heart goes out to him, has had some issues with injuries. And
he seems to be more often injured than on the court, obviously.
I'm always a little afraid. I get a gray hair every time I watch Kyle dive for a ball or go after a hard rebound, but he shows no fear, even in view of the fact he's had some of these injuries, and maybe this year will be his year that he makes it through without having to be shackled by an injury.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we both can hope for on a positive note, in the sense that you always want to see the best team possible on the floor, regardless of whether it's college or pro. I don't like to see guys injured.
Nobody likes to see an injury.
Anything like that. And then your best guys are not playing, and so forth. So
we have one other player to talk about who is potentially a big part of the cast. And we saw him a little bit last night. We saw him throw down a really interesting three-point shot from the corner, and that's Foster Lawyer. Now,
he had some quality minutes last night. I mean,
you're going to see a lot of quality minutes out of Foster Lawyer.
The camera was not on him, but he was doing some nice things. And the time I think he was in the game, like I said, he gave Izzo some quality minutes. I don't know how many minutes he had last night, but he definitely played consistently. Would you call him or Thomas Kithier a glue guy? Those guys that you need to do the small things, rebound, block shots, maybe go after some balls in aggressive fashion, like we used to call those the hustle stats.
It's interesting you mention Foster Lawyer and Thomas Kithier together. They're both sophomores out of a kind of a small town, satellite of Detroit, Clarkston, Michigan. Now, there are two different kinds of players. They have two very different roles on the team. But I started by mentioning Foster Lawyer, so let's just say something about him that is important and should be said. Which is that Foster Lawyer is a critical player in that he is the player who provides a relief valve for Cassius Winston. And so when Cassius needs to take a rest and Cassius gets tired or Cassius tweaks something and is uncomfortable for whatever reason,
Yes.
Mr. Lawyer may very well need to come into the game and assume that quarterback position in the backcourt for Michigan State, and that means he's going to have to handle the ball. He's going to have to call plays. He's going to have to pass the ball.
Okay.
He's going to have to be an instrumental in the transition game.
Right.
Foster Lawyer is going to become a very important player. I think and I know that he has worked very, very hard. I think Foster, one item with him at 6'0" and 175.
Yes.
He's not as big as some of these other guys out there. So
Right.
he has that issue that he needs to somehow be able to address. I would say somewhat of a quicker release on his outside shot would be a really welcome development.
Okay.
And I think I'm seeing that this year, because I think Foster can be a very good outside shooter. It's just that he, I think, had some troubles adjusting at this level, maybe due to his size and maybe not getting rid of the ball as quickly. But in almost all other areas of his game, Foster Lawyer is very solid, very, very astute, a thinking man's basketball player. Let's talk about Thomas Kithier.
I do have a question regarding Thomas Kithier, and it relates to his relationship on the court relationship to Cassius Winston. Do you feel that the communication is great between these guys, and Kithier is going to be the guy that knows where Cassius is for the most part on the court, or am I missing something with the eye test in that respect to Thomas Kithier?
I don't know that I have anything in particular to observe about the particular relationship on the court with Cassius Winston and Thomas Kithier being aware of one another and using each other to the greatest advantage,
Yes.
other than to say this, of course, and we haven't talked about Cassius much because you don't need to. What do we need to say about him?
No.
It's all been said.
He's at the top of the stat sheet, and the whole Spartan Nation and otherwise knows who he is and what he's about. So.
The only reason I said that in the way I said it is that I think Cassius Winston knows what everybody is doing on the floor at all times, and so there's not much room for improvement that needs to happen in terms of Cassius Winston's ability to know who's doing what and when they're doing it.
Okay.
I don't know about the other way around with Thomas Kithier, but what to me I see in Thomas Kithier is a very highly skilled basketball player, and he's also someone who does not seem to make many mistakes. He seems to be in the correct position at the correct time.
Right.
If he has an opportunity, he seems to convert it.
Right.
He's not someone that gets the ball underneath and tries to rush the shot or somehow figures out a way to not convert. He's a very efficient player and a very reliable hand, Thomas Kithier. And I don't think he's talked about much for that reason, because he's just as a sophomore. I mean, Thomas Kithier was producing very, very well as a freshman, but as a sophomore, he's just improved and very, very fine player.
Right.
Xavier Tillman, an upperclassman now. Xavier's been around the block a couple of times. He lost some weight. We'll see whether that was a good thing or not as time wears on.
He seems to be moving a little bit better based on last night's performance around the basket, I would say. And also, he reminds me of a guy like a this is going back into the old Oklahoma days, like a Wayman Tisdale.
You lost me there.
A guy like that played in the 80s at Oklahoma University. maybe a guy in the pros like Lonnie Shelton. Used to play for the Portland Trailblazers. Was on their championship team in 1977. But I guess. What are your thoughts regarding his production? I guess I'm expecting more from Xavier Tillman as far as in the scoring column.
I want to say a couple things about Xavier. I'd love to meet Xavier Tillman, but from what I can see of the way he conducts himself, he's a true gentleman.
Right.
He is very mature.
Okay.
Married guy already at a young age.
Okay, very good.
Or married or getting married, one of the two.
Okay.
But a family man.
Good.
Serious young man. I have nothing but very, very high praise for Xavier Tillman.
Yes.
I've been hoping to see some more point production out of him this year, and last night I began to think to myself, gosh, where's Xavier? Where's Xavier? But the reality was a couple of things. Xavier's doing a lot of things out. This is again in the nature of it doesn't always show up in the line score.
Okay.
Xavier's doing a lot of things out of there which open opportunities up for other people.
Okay.
If everybody's worried about Xavier Tillman, that gives Malik Hall a chance.
As far as court spacing,
that's exactly
right. Things of that nature that's going to give your.
When you draw two players on you, that leaves somebody else wide open.
Right.
The other thing about Xavier is, at the end of the night, I thought, gosh, let's see what Xavier did. But what became immediately apparent was Xavier Tillman had 10 rebounds last night.
That's a good point.
He had 10 rebounds last night.
That's a good point.
That's nothing to scoff at in anybody's book. That means you're working hard, you're in the right place, and you're doing all the things that you should be doing. And in addition to that, Mark, when the game was on the line last night, and Seton Hall had a couple of chances,
they did,
down underneath.
They did.
Who was there? Xavier Tillman.
Yeah,
and some others, but Xavier was there.
Yeah, that speaks to the defensive
Xavier
and ability
was the savior
of Michigan State, because, as I said earlier, it's amazing to me that as ragged at times as that game was, the last 240, the defense tightened down. Seton Hall was scoreless, and that allowed Michigan State to come back strong. And if you have anything else to add, that would be great. And then we'll move to the final portion of the podcast. We'll look at the Big Ten, either overall, or we can also look at the schedule. If you have some things, I see Duke coming up December 3rd, I believe. That's going to be, what is that?
Mark, December 3rd at the Breslin Center.
Okay.
In East Lansing, Michigan.
Yes.
Duke, the Blue Demons.
Yes.
Coach K.
Right. Winningest coach
and his gang.
Yeah, that's right.
And Mark,
that's right.
They're going to be looking to get a little revenge, because we all remember what happened last March, or was it even into April?
Yes,
but that was one of the finest wins by a Michigan State basketball game ever.
Right.
I don't think anybody expected them to win that game, but Michigan State did win it, and you can expect Duke to be loaded for bear when they come to the Breslin Center December 3rd. So that is going to be a very big game, but I never like to get ahead of myself. I don't want to see us looking at Duke, because we got a game. We got to play Charleston Southern Monday night. I
think it's 5:30 Pacific time.
And then a week later, Mark, we got to play Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech is no slouch.
Those games come before Duke.
Right. You seem to be like a guy in the time that I've known you. You have what I would say cautious optimism, one game at a time mentality. You don't seem to be looking ahead too far beyond the immediate game that's in front of you.
Mark, Ben Hogan said, golf is played one shot at a time. And it's no different with basketball or any other sport.
Right.
So you're exactly right about that, and I am always cautious.
Yes.
Because it's basketball.
Right.
And that ball has a funny way of doing things you didn't expect it to do.
Yeah.
And they can do it at any point in time.
You miss a free throw, and what do they say? Ball doesn't lie, right?
We never know what's going to happen. So it's not a good idea to become sanguine.
Right. Who do you think? Who do you think in the Big Ten is going to give Michigan State a challenge? I think the ratings, the poll ratings are a bit overrated at this time. They really don't reflect what's happening on the floor. But who in the Big Ten would you say would be a threat to Michigan State and Tom Izzo maybe making the Sweet 16 one more time or the Final Four?
Mark, I don't mean to be a smart aleck by giving you this answer.
That's okay.
But my answer is every team in the Big Ten is a threat. You have to take every one of those Big Ten games deadly serious, and particularly on the road. But every single one of those games is a potential loss. You cannot lose focus or intensity. You got to bring everything you got every single game, because in the Big Ten, on any given day, any one of these teams can beat any one of the others.
Right. And it seems to me, I mean, I'm a West Coast guy, Pac-12, there seems to be a huge difference between Big Ten basketball in the sense of that Big Ten basketball is more physical. The guys that you have in Penn State, Iowa State, Rutgers, these guys are guys that are going to throw their weight around in the on the court, and they may not be the finesse. What I'm getting to is the Big Ten doesn't seem to me to ever been a finesse league. Not like some of the skill players in the Pac-12 or maybe the Mountain West Conference or maybe even the WCC with the Gonzaga or someone like that. Can you speak to that as far as the physicality of the Big Ten versus other Power 5 conference games that you've seen?
The only response I think I can give to that is that I agree, I think, with some of what you're saying, which is that there has been somewhat of a perception, perhaps, of the Big Ten being somewhat of a physical, beat 'em up, knock down, drag out, grind it out,
yes,
kind of a league.
I would agree.
Whether that is really the case or not is another matter.
All right.
And whether or not any other division, I really think that sometimes trying to cast these categorical pronouncements on this league versus that league and how they play and how they don't play. I'm more apt to look at game by game and see actually what is happening. So that's my response.
Okay, so you're going to trust the eye test rather than go with the perception of the Big Ten being a meat and potatoes league. All these big guys, all they've been doing is eating, high calorie foods and things like meat and potatoes and sirloin. there and some of the
Well, I have another.
areas.
There's another golf expression I've always thought was useful. Certainly is useful in the game of golf, and I think it's useful in a lot of sports. And that is, Mark, they don't draw pictures on the scorecard. So, however you get there, at the end of the game, there's a winner and there's a loser, and they don't draw pictures on the scorecard.
Right. What if you win by 1 or you win by 20, you've still won, correct?
Well, that's a little bit of a different matter, but I mean, in the sense of a lopsided score can tell us something.
Yes.
But in general, we don't draw pictures on the scorecard. And my only point being, however it is that you come by the win, I'm starting to throw out lots of quotes here, but wasn't it Al Davis who said, "Just win, baby"?
Yes, and it's not the journey, but the destination. Would you say, as far as just winning the game, how you got there is not as important?
Well,
as the,
I hope our destination.
final score?
I hope our destination is the Final Four. But it's going to be a great season, and if somehow this is for you, tournament selection committee.
Yes.
If you can somehow put the Spartans out here in Southern California this spring, I know one real happy camper that would make.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time here to visit and speak to Michigan State basketball on the From the Bench podcast. You can go to accessmediaglobal.com. Thank you for your time, Rick, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back. And if you're comfortable, maybe we'll talk a little golf, some birdies, some pars, and maybe some long game and short game regarding golf. I appreciate your time. You've taught me a lot about Michigan State and golf, and that's part of the reason why I have you on the podcast, and you've contributed that knowledge and some of the nuances of the game. So we appreciate you being on the podcast for today. My name is Mark Janish. You can listen to this and any other podcast on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, for AccessMediaGlobal.com and the From the Bench podcast. I'm Mark Janish saying thank you for listening and have a great day.